most successful law firm owners are not the ones that do everything themselves. They're the ones that know what they should stop doing and what to delegate to other people.
It's the valley of death, which is to say your business is just good enough to have traction, but not established enough to let you step away from it. And what that means is you are not an owner, you are just a very high-risk arbitrage employee. Welcome back to Firm Factor, everyone. My name is John Avisosha. As always, we have Darin Fenn, CEO of LegalRev, here joining me, my auspicious co-host. Darin, how you doing today? What the hell are we talking about?
I am good, thank you. Forgive me, I'm on location, so my production quality is not as good here. People start wandering around behind me, forgive me. Today's topic is fun. We are calling it Everyone Sucks at Something. What we mean by this. So what I've seen time and time again over the years is the most successful lawyers, the most successful law firm owners are not the ones that do everything themselves. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that know what they should stop doing and what to delegate to other people. And I see this take down companies all the time, small and I'm sure large.
And I think we'll be talking more about this, but it's the valley of death, which is to say your business is just good enough to have traction, but not established enough to let you step away from the wheel. And what that means is you are not an owner, you are just a very high-risk arbitrage employee, right? Because you have capitaled your way into a job. Which is really an unfortunate place to be, both because it's difficult to let go of what you can control directly, and also because usually small businesses, the founder usually is the most capable person because they have the best in the short term, right? Because they've got the vision, they have the history, and they usually have the service expertise.
I struggle with this all the time, right? I mean, could I write the new ad copy thing that we're doing better than my marketing? I don't know. I mean, I've got a lot of experience in that, but it's not the highest and best use of my time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's important is, whether you can do it okay or not is not the point.
Yep.
Point is there are things to outsource and there are things that you shouldn't.
And I think
so. Let's talk about that.
That is a fantastic lead in to today's market story. So you may have heard that Nike faces a securities class action right now. The allegation is the company told investors its direct-to-consumer strategy was working and successful when it plainly and patently was not. So by early 2025 of last year, Nike stock was down 64% from its 2021 peak, erasing about $180 billion in shareholder value. Now, I know. The story is pretty crazy. So in the 2010s, as many of you may or may not be aware, a lot of stuff was going online. A new generation of brands were figuring out they didn't need stores. Amazon was on the tail end of its meteoric rise and dominating a whole bunch of e-commerce platforms. And a lot of stores and brands...
Zappos.
Zappos.
Right? Was on the rise at that point.
Famous story where a Zappos salesman bought a guy a pizza because the customer mentioned he was hungry when he was on the line at the start of the sales call, and by the end, the pizza had shown up. That's a famous story from Zappos and customer service.
Great customer service.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now Nike's competitors sold directly to consumers online, right? They cut out the retail brick and mortar middlemen and kept the margin for themselves, which is traditionally a big problem for retail distributors like Nike. And it worked beautifully. But it only worked for luggage startups and lipstick brands built around that model from day one that had the online e-commerce infrastructure. Nike and many other legacy brands watched from the sidelines, mostly selling through wholesale partners like Foot Locker, Dick's, Urban Outfitters, and so on. And its board got nervous it was missing the moment. So they hired a new CEO who was from eBay with a technology background. Zero apparel, a retail experience, and a vision of a digital future without those third-party stores peskily getting in the way. Darin, how much do you know about this story?
Yeah, I know about this because I lived in Portland, so I saw a lot of this. I've done a lot of work with Nike as well. So it's crazy, right, that they did this. But it's just a reminder that it sounded good in some meeting, some board meeting, like, let's hire this guy from eBay who will help us move into e-commerce. but he knows nothing about shoes.
It's interesting because e-commerce sounds easy. It's like, oh, we'll just cut out the stores, right? And then we'll just sell online. It sounds like less infrastructure. But in reality, e-commerce distribution to do reliably takes exponentially more infrastructure than brick and mortar, because now you've got to figure out not only how to keep all of your merchandise everywhere across the country, but also how to physically get it to the customer on time. And then there's
and handle returns, handle customer service, handle shipping errors on it, as opposed to just the truck goes to Foot Locker and drops off 500 pairs of shoes.
And it's all centralized, right? So the brick and mortar is the disadvantage is that it can't be everywhere as a sales point, right? But the advantage is that it's actually logistically much simpler. But Nike did not think about that. Within a year of the new strategy, Nike had dropped 50% of its retail partners, right? So they hired the ex-eBay guy and fired half of everyone. And instead of innovating on new products or new consumer campaigns, they prioritized the Jordan model of
they
the
sold Air Jordans,
which is at that time almost 40 years old by now. And they're easy to sell online. And so it was great low-hanging fruit. They're just like, we'll just double down on these Jordans. But by June of 2024, the strategy had utterly failed. Consumers just were not interested in these old shoes. And Nike stock dropped by 20% in a single day that month. It's worst since going public in 1980, wiping out over $28 billion in market cap. Now, the company brought back a retired 32-year veteran to undo the 4 years of damage that the eBay guy had done. But over a year later, they're still paying for it. Nike just laid off another 775 people, and the stock is still down around 63% from its 2021 peak.
Look, and the reality is Nike can handle it.
Yeah.
Right? Nike can weather it. It has the resources. It has the capital. I would say most law firms cannot handle 40 years of tragic mistakes, right? My company couldn't. No way. And look, I can tell you firsthand, I have made this mistake repeatedly. I have repeatedly tried to bring somebody in who seemed like they would be good to run the company for me so I can go work on other ventures. They didn't have direct experience in working in the legal industry, legal marketing, et cetera, but they had lots of experience in other things, running other operations. Failed every time. And in fact, I had to come back, deal with the morale fallout, deal with the loss of revenue, come in, work 80-hour weeks again for 4 months, 6 months, a year, whatever, to get back whatever we recovered. It's a tiny version of the Nike story. But you're a little bit weaker every time you do that, right? So yeah, Nike will recover, but Nike is weaker for this because they lost all that growth that they would have had if they had been smart and innovated like Nike's done and went after an easy, comfortable shoe. Allbirds was like all online.
Yeah. And what's interesting is
Nike's got the best people in the world, the smartest designers, the best marketers. Why couldn't they think of that? Because they took the easy way. They took the shortcut.
They have the best people in the world, but what's so interesting is the parallel between cultural relevancy and distribution.
Totally.
The consequences of everyone, everyone cared about Air Jordans back when I was in high school in 2009 to 2012, right? But no longer. Right now, no one cares what shoes you're wearing. Everyone just cares how cheaply you can get it. And that's a direct consequence of Nike and other legacy brands failing to ride the wave into the digital future. Because before you would queue at the store at 5 a.m. waiting for the drop of the new Jordans or other shoe or any product, the scarcity that they engendered from a physical retail event. Black Fridays in 2005 was almost a blood sport.
Look, Nike has been brilliant at marketing for years and years and years. And I think here's what happened, right? They said, we don't need to bring in somebody who knows what they're doing. We know what we're doing, and we'll tell it to this person, and we'll just kind of do it ourselves. We'll have this person come in and it sounds like confidence, but it's actually not, right? It's ignorance about what other people contribute to your success. And I've learned this the hard way. And it's very easy to convince yourself, that it's going to work, right? I've done this. I've had to go back and forth. Look, here's a parallel to small law firms that I've directly seen many, many times over the years. it's the owner who fires the marketing agency and says, well, I'll just run some Facebook ads myself, right? And they end up coming back 8 times out of 10, I would say, come back realizing that, yes, they had to pay for it, but that the cost was worth the result was worth the cost, right?
Yeah.
Or for example, like a firm who hires, an expert outside of the legal industry with no industry experience and doesn't direct them the right way because doesn't really understand all the nuances of the legal industry. And then nobody realizes this until they're in free fall and it's too late. Look, the guy that Nike hired was a solid professional. The guy was a high level executive at eBay. It seems like the smart choice, but he didn't know the industry, right? So it's kind of the same thing. We're a niche marketing firm. I would say a marketing agency that kills it for restaurants may not deliver as well for a personal injury attorney, right? Domain experience matters. And I think that's what it comes down to. So it's about, what can I do? What shouldn't I do? Look, most people think like physics is hard, right? Physics. You immediately think, because they don't understand it. Marketing, we all saw Mad Men. Everybody thinks, look, I know I speak English. I can do marketing. Yeah, except Don Draper had like 20 years, 30 years of experience by the time we met him, right? A 6-year-old child can write an ad, right? It's just English. Hi, would you like to buy my services? Writing the one that makes people hire you or come to your business, it's another matter entirely. And it's worth,
It's so interesting you bring up Mad Men because that was such a perfect series, past the Hines. Past the Hines and his speech of so eloquently summarizing why Hershey's isn't a candy bar. It's a moment of nostalgia from your childhood. It's love distilled. I forget exactly what the pitch was, but it was understanding that marketing is not. I mean, it is distribution.
It's not just language.
Exactly. It's the sale of an emotional story, right? And through that story, you find a way to either sell vitamins or painkillers, depending on your industry niche, positioning. And I think Mad Men was so good at showing, it was a TV, it was just a series, but
it certainly all made us think we could do it. Just like we watch, LA Law, and we all think, I could be a lawyer or something, right? These are television shows, and it's much harder. But I think specifically with like marketing, it's one of those things where, just because I can read doesn't mean I can represent myself in a legal matter.
Yeah.
But it's just English. Yeah, but it's specific, right? So I think about marketing. I think it's intangible, and we all just kind of sell. We've been selling different things, selling my mom to get more candy when I was 4, right? So we all know sales. Marketing is actually something you learn and you train on, and you look at statistics and you build these things. Don Draper was brilliant, but it came from a methodology. Right? It wasn't just random. These executives were trained in that method and spent decades developing it, all worked together in New York on Madison Avenue. I mean, it's a reminder that why did Hershey hire them instead of just get a marketing assistant to come up with their own ads? Why do big companies hire big ad agency? Why does Nike use Wyden & Kennedy? Because Nike alone did not come up with just do it.
And that's why
3 words.
Not even the swoosh. The swoosh was made by an outside artist too, right? I think
Wyden & Kennedy.
Yeah, exactly. Like what do they pay her? Like $38 stock, like shares of stock or 50 shares of stock that's now worth
something
like
crazy.
$30 million. She hung on to them for years and years and years. And I think knowing when, not just when I say knowing when to outsource, I'm not literally meaning knowing when to hire a vendor, though yes, that could be it too. Knowing when to delegate and to specialize.
Knowing when to delegate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This isn't just about outside companies. This is about how you run your business.
Because, like, for example, this podcast, is run not by me or Darin, but by a variety of individuals behind the scenes. Like, I have no idea substantially how any of these cameras and lighting and how this I don't even set up this Riverside link, right? It would be ludicrous for me to begin telling our production, supervisor Sam or our editor Michelle how to do their jobs, because it's just not my arena. And it never should be. It would be a horrible arbitrage of everyone's time. It would annoy my team. It is okay to admit your limitations. In fact, I couldn't get a job at Hemmett Law, right? I hope my whole team is smarter than I am, because all the summer associates we hire had better grades than I did in undergrad, right? Like, for a good reason, right? That's how it should be if you are building a team to be proud of, because the roles you're hiring them for are not the roles that it's different functions. And that's okay. Like and follow the show if you're enjoying it, and we'll be right back. Support for the show comes from LegalRev. They don't just market law firms, they grow them. With smart SEO, Google Ads, web design, and AI-ready search strategies, they make sure your next client finds you first. If you're ready to win online, go to LegalRev.com/factor. That's LegalRev.com/factor. And now to continue the conversation. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. Now, many solo and small firm owners tie their identity to being the person who does everything. We covered that earlier in the episode. But since admitting needing support feels like admitting weakness, a lot of my compatriots prefer to follow their gut. Only about 46% of law firms and only 14% of solo attorneys have a marketing budget at all to speak of. And about 70% don't even have a receptionist, in my experience. Who knows if that holds for you, Darin, but I think a majority.
It's probably true. I would say 95% of them don't have a marketing budget, including you.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you don't have a marketing. I mean, you have a marketing, but it's not broken down into here's the budget. We expect this from it, in the same way that you would do with almost anything else.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, and that's interesting, because we don't have a marketing budget, because what I do is I go to our vendors and I say, here's the outcomes we want. Right. I start from the opposite end, which is to say, instead of saying, here's the money we have, what can we do with it? I say, here's the outcomes. You tell us how much it will cost. And then we do the arbitrage from there.
Well, I've never had anybody in 15 years tell me, here's how much money, what can I do for it? But what I will say is, I do think there is value in having a budget, especially for a smaller firm. Mm-hmm. What did I think? It was Rainmaker Institute, I think, said you want to spend 10% of your build hours on marketing to stay level.
Yeah, 10% to stay level. About 15% is super aggressive. We're right around 15 to 17% ourselves, right. But that's pretty overtuned for most law firms. Usually a solid 10 to 11% will sort of give you a slow trajectory of growth for most.
I would say most of my clients are in the 3 to 5% range. And the ones that, spending more money is not always the right decision. I mean, you got to spend it right. You got to do the right things. It's just the same thing that, there's no between delegating and abdicating. You want to find the right people and delegate and manage it. So, you want to hire people smarter than you.
In specific domains.
It's just like you were talking about. Yeah, in the specific domain.
Yeah, and I should say, doing everything yourself isn't like grinding. Like, people think that being busy is a good sign, right? Mm-hmm. And I would argue sometimes it's not, right? You want to brag how little you do as a leader at a company, which is to say, you want to make sure, if your hair is constantly on fire, right? If you're doing 80-hour weeks, in my experience, it is usually a function of something being suboptimal or needing to be improved. Right? You should try to get the business to a point where it can function without you as the key stakeholder immediately hovering over everything. Right? If the whole business falls apart due to your absence, your inaction, or your action, then it means you don't have a business. You just have a guy. Right? And you just have a firm that's running sort of in absentia. And
it took me a long time to build that. Right? Yeah. It probably took me 8-10 years to build a company that did not depend on my, I can leave for a month and the company will be okay.
And that's such a blessing. And that sort of
necessary.
That danger zone of like having to be there is quintessential stage 3 behavior that often makes firms unprofitable and certainly unscalable, and can stick you in a really tough position.
As we said, right, we did a whole podcast on this. A healthy culture is not about just well-being, right? A healthy culture is a prerequisite for lasting profitability, right? You need a culture that is going to support growth and empower people. And, I think a good example is like, what does it actually cost when the owner of a firm spends 10 hours a week on marketing that they're bad at, right? It's not just the opportunity cost lost of those billable hours. It's the reputational cost of poor marketing. It'd be like if I tried to go save money by managing the servers of my company instead of the tech professionals who I've hired, who I pay well to, who specialize in those things. It would save me money, but it would cost me more in the long run because of all the chaos, right? So,
and it's so interesting because reputational loss, I actually come in a real double bind with sometimes is that we try so hard to be a premium brand that it can risk doing an average job makes us look even in like if our website is really incredible, for example, but then we do a photo shoot with our team and it's just average, that contrast will make the normally average work, which is like nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone does it. It would otherwise that contrast, just putting it, a decent photo on a really good website makes it look so much worse, right? So once you raise that bar, you have to work really hard.
Now you have to raise it. Now you have to, I was a professional photographer for 15 years, so you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Sure. It's the same thing. Look, we all have cameras in our pocket. Mm-hmm. Why would you hire a professional photographer? It's more than just pointing the camera, right? Just like it's more than just, going to court or writing a brief or writing a contract. Like it takes, it's all of your life experience, all of your professional experience. It's sad because I've seen so many small law firm owners go through a sort of a version of the same story, right? They feel guilty about not investing enough in marketing. They should be doing more, but they're not really sure what to do. So they don't spend enough. They kind of half-ass a website with some local company they found, which creates more trouble than they thought. And now they're scrambling and now they're dealing with all kinds of stuff. They don't spend enough money. And then they say, oh, marketing and SEO doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no. The reason it doesn't work is it's not that marketing is impossible or their firm is a unicorn. It's that they either do it badly, they outsource it without understanding enough to evaluate whether or not it's working, and they don't pay enough attention to it. I think that's the biggest issue. They turn their attention from it, and it always ends badly.
We'll be right back. Support for the show comes from Thyme. Thyme captures every billable email on cases and turns them into client-friendly time entry descriptions completely hands-free. No more lost time, no more pre-billing reviews, just up to 30% more revenue. Get a free demo at thyme.org/factor. That's thyme.org/factor. Thanks for your patience. Welcome back. I'm gonna defend law firm owners here for a second, which is to say I think a lot of marketing companies don't give firms enough information to educate them to know how to evaluate.
100%. Like, no question. I didn't want to go off on my peers, but yes, no, I totally agree. We lean into the opposite, right? We flood people with information.
And I have worked like when years and years and years ago, like I think 6 or 7 years ago, we worked with another company and we now realize we made the horrible mistake of letting them control the pipeline and paying them per lead. And that's it. That's the only way we paid them. We paid them per lead. And so what happens is we neither knew what was coming at us month over month, and they didn't have any eye for quality because they only made the phone ring. Right? It's quite easy to get the phone to ring, but the lead isn't qualified or it's low effort garbage. You want a lot of leads, advertise overnight. right? We tried that. We tried a 24-hour advertising cycle, and this was my
Yeah,
idea.
you get all kinds of people. They're just
You
not
get
the kind of
all-
people you want.
Yeah, we get all sorts of, frankly, crazies who maybe we're categorically in family law, but we're not people who we're looking to hire, looking to solve a problem. We're usually, abusive to our team. So it's easy to get the phone to ring, right? But unfortunately, that standard of like not having enough information and not understanding everything that you're outsourcing, that's the norm. That's not the exception. In 2025, a survey of 4,800 US practices found that 68% of firms under 50 lawyers have no written business development plan. A full third said they didn't plan to develop one either, which is pretty stunning, right? They have
That's
no
the stunning part. The fact that a third of them said they don't intend to. Look, I've said this before, and look, just to be clear, I know I'm sometimes a little hard on them, but I really, really enjoy working with attorneys, right? I've been doing this for 16 years. I've worked with thousands of firms. I like them. I have a bunch of lawyers in my family. Maybe I grew up around it. Um, it's, it's just so hard to see when people handle this stuff poorly. And I think it comes back to, and I don't take this as criticism, but as far as I understand, there's not a lot of business courses in law school. And you end up going out and they work at a bigger firm, and then they partner up with someone and they go off and they start their own thing. They're now small business owners.
Yeah.
With zero training in small business, right? And without the time, because in my experience, all of my clients are busy all the time. They don't have the time to learn. They dive right into it, and suddenly they've got staff and HR and payroll and all of this stuff that nobody had any training on. They're smart and capable, so they figure it out.
And that's what's so interesting is we just say, here you go, you're a CEO now, and hopefully you figure out what an accrual accounting system is eventually. Which to be fair, most law firms are cash basis, but just a little accounting quip for all zero of you in the audience who know about accounting.
I'm cash basis because I can't handle accrual.
Well, actually, it was funny. It was like one of my first reforms when I was put in charge of administration was to switch us to an accrual basis, which really helps me plan for long term. That is
no, it's a better way to go. It's harder.
Yeah, it's a lot harder. The downside is TLDR. For those who do not know, accrual basis accounts for revenue or expenses when they were, when the service or economic benefit was imparted. Which is to say, cash basis is you can't count the cash when it hits or leaves your account. And the difference is that you can have like yearly annual expenses that sort of quote unquote surprise you because they're not accounted for in your balance sheet month to month, but then they show up all at once at the end of the year. Accrual will split that out and amortize it across 12 months. And so the end result is it's harder to make money on paper, but you're always assured that whatever money is
way
left,
better for cash flow and management. Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, so that was a little bit of an interlude, but the thing is the decision making, 2/3 of small firms are like doing work they shouldn't be doing or paying for work they can't fully evaluate, be it through their marketing channels, through their operations, which means they don't need to work harder or spend more in reality. They probably just need a framework for knowing what to handle in-house, what to hire and outsource or consult for, and how to tell if their partners are worth keeping, hanging on to, or developing further, right? That's good news overall.
But I think that's the key, right? To be clear, right? Is that it's not that you got to work harder or spend more. It's that you need to identify what to delegate. And when you delegate it, you need to be sure you understand what those people are doing.
Yep.
So you can determine if they're successful at the thing you delegated.
And I think a good framework to approach this is the build, buy, borrow framework to help organize and decide what tasks should be managed internally and what should be outsourced or fully developed through either external vendors or through internal employees. To make this less academic, we'll boil 250 pages down to the essentials, and that is the following. 1, is there a core differentiator? If yes, handle it yourself or assign it to a colleague who knows your firm and your story very well. Your client experience should be developed internally, for example, because it's what makes you. It's your core function. And writing your own client intake script and training your receptionist to use it is a good example. A bad example is like building your own website from scratch because you like website design, right? The differentiator is you should control the values, not the hard skills that control them. And two, this is another good place to start, is you should ask yourself, do I need this full time? And can I responsibly manage it? If yes, consider hiring, but only if you understand the function well enough to set expectations and course correct when things inevitably go wrong. So a good example, hiring a paralegal with intake experience and training them on your specific standards. A bad example is hiring a marketing director when nobody at the firm can define what success looks like or has any experience with marketing, which is a very common, like the paralegal and receptionist do in the social media. Perfect example.
I have, I don't know, 75 clients that do that. And we work with them, but mostly they don't really know. I mean, they don't have any experience in marketing. They've just been given the job, and they're smart and capable.
Yeah.
And they're young usually, so they have some understanding of social media. Again, I feel like don't do it if you're not going to really do it well. Better to not do it at all.
Yeah.
But I think what you said is really important about hiring. Hiring somebody isn't necessarily easier. Now you got to manage that person.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the jobs too don't require a full-time person. Right. I mean, look, I've watched firms try to build marketing in-house for 15 years. Right. I would say I have 5 clients out of 350 that really do that well and don't probably waste some money on too much staff.
Yep.
Right. You don't need 3 people on your team, a marketing assistant, a senior marketing, and hire a company like ours.
I think people forget that they trade risk arbitrage for time, right? So like you don't trade dollars for output. You trade dollars for certainty. And so if you can hire someone to put their butt in the seat, right? But that doesn't mean what they're going to be doing. Their output is value add or assured to work if they don't have that niche specialized experience. A perfect example of why we do not outsource our Google ads, et cetera, is because it is a highly technical field, but it does not require a lot of manpower hours relative per month. Like it's just not a full-time job.
That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key, right? So I think, and let's look at this from like a marketing team thing. Because like I said, I've seen this. Some capabilities they cost more to develop internally than they do to just pay for it somewhere else.
Yep.
Right. So I think, we were talking about the build by borrow. The third part is borrow. Do I need specialized experience to do this particular task that I can't develop, or do I need full-time, right? Most of it is not full-time. Mm-hmm. If you were going to hire a full marketing, just for example, if you were going to hire a team to do all that we do for him, you'd need a web designer, a web programmer, a server-side sysadmin, you'd need a couple of writers, you'd need a Google Ads manager, you would need a project manager, you need another project manager on the back end team. You suddenly start, but none of these would be full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Right. My team works 6 hours a month for your company over here, and 8 hours a month for a company over here, and 12 hours a month for a company over here in different things. We've got an illustrator on staff. How many times have you used that? I think one time we went to them back to the logo, or maybe even Lucas did the logo, right? So, but we have those capabilities. And what I like to think of them is that you're basically just sharing this $500,000 marketing team with 300 other law firms, right? And the economies of scale work to your advantage, right? So it's, there are other things, tax strategy, right? Don't do it yourself. IT, hire people to do these things.
And that's everything you just said about the $500,000 marketing team that you share. That your description that you just shared with us assumes that everything goes perfectly, right? It assumes, like, for example, like I could hire all those people, and then if everything went perfectly, it was terrible math. But what we're not emphasizing here is that you could hire all these people and they could also be bad, right? It's
Well,
not
not yet. And now you got to put them in an office and you got to deal with them. And maybe this person has a problem or something. Who knows?
yeah, exactly.
With human quotient, Um, look, there are things where specialists that serve lots of firms are going to be better. You don't need a full-time 40-hour-a-week IT guy walking around your office, right? But you need someone on call. You need somebody available, and you need them to be available to work as necessary. Things change. Technology, digital marketing, they change faster than most lawyers can keep up with.
Yep.
Right? The law changes faster than I could keep up with. Right? So it's not, by the time you figure out last year's Google algorithm, it's already changed. Right? So hire people who know what they're doing. But I think it's critical. You need to be able to tell if they know what they're doing. And that's the hard part with marketing, with anything, right? For example, good. You hire somebody with legal experience, right? Legal marketing experience. Bad would be not checking to see if they are working toward your firm's goals, not having goals, not articulating them, not holding them accountable, not looking, what are the benchmarks of what does success look like?
A marketing company will always find a way to make it look like the numbers are going up and to the right.
Totally.
Totally.
You need to know if it's working. I mean, I think this is really important, right? It's, the oversight rule.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of which path you choose, right, you have to be able to answer a single question. Whatever it is I hire, how will I know if it's not working? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, that's critical, right? How would I know if I'm losing margin? Yeah, maybe I'm getting more business, but it's costing me twice as much. Or, my reputation is nosediving, but I don't know about it. Or, the platform that I'm putting my ads on was disappearing into a void. You don't actually know. So you're putting a lot of trust. You need to establish and demand transparency. Look, Nike waited 4 years to find out that its DTC strategy was failing.
Yeah.
Right. Most firms don't have that much time. You need to identify what's working and what's not and address it.
And I think that's a fantastic place to break it here, Darin. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another week of Firm Factor. Please follow us on socials, find us online. You can find me on my LinkedIn. I'm sure it'll be linked in show notes. We will see you very soon.
We wish you success.